he got there in the first place. And so we agreed, or it just sort of came about, that here are the things that you can do to get active, but here are the things that we can do to just be better citizens, to be smarter or more empathetic. Um, here are the things to get involved and to get in, to so that we know you're going to vote when you're old enough. And I think that when it took that turn, and it wasn't just two angry women writing why we hate this guy, and we do touch on it, but it's become how to empower people to do something about it, really do something, even if you're not doing anything that seems overtly political, about what you're reading and how you're thinking about your life. I think that was the most exciting moment in writing the book, is when it became really about touching a generation and making sure that they don't tune out with all this nastiness, with all this confusion, and to get them involved and get them to care. And like Kerri said too, this book is perfect for, we are very politically minded. We think about politics. We're always involved in it. It's amazing to us that we have neighbors and friends who will still say, I don't know how to get involved. I've never called a senator before. I'm not even following. And so this book has been great for the parents of these teens, people who just want to sort of wade in a little more gently into this big community of resistance.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty too of us doing the action format, is that it's much less off-putting to see a bunch of little bites, that are very easily consumable and easily understandable, and not get overwhelmed. If I think if we had written it in a different format, and God knows we tried other formats, I think it probably would have been a little more off-putting. But I think, what we've created is something that people can look at and understand their place in the fight. And not the fight against Trump, I mean the fight for a better world, which is, Joanna really hit it on the head there. It really did become exciting when it was like, let's not shoot for getting this guy out of the office. Let's shoot for helping people create the world that we all so desperately want to live in, a one of equality and justice and fairness and economic justice, and just everything. And then it really just, the world opened up to us, and it really became so exciting to think about inspiring a whole generation that we feel like it's kind of like hovering on a razor's edge right now, this generation. I don't want to lose them. I don't think anybody does. They're passionate and wonderful and lovely, and they have their place too. And we just wanted to make sure that they saw where that was and how easy that was to get involved.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about how to make things that are sustainable, that, once, hopefully not in the distant future, Trump is no longer president, once we don't have this sort of central figure to resist against, maybe at some point Democrats get back in power, how do we keep the momentum going? How do we build sustainable programs and sustainable actions and things that people can do? So I like this idea of having actions that are in themselves important and not just, against a particular person.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think it's safe to say that the majority of our actions have nothing to do with politics in a traditional sense. So, we have actions, especially when we're the early chapters, when it's just a discussion of what you bring to the table, what are our talents? How can we apply our talents, lend them to a better world? And then just actions about making a plan, making a family, having a family meeting. My kids love the family meetings. They really buy in. I have little kids still, and they love the family meeting. They love discussing, what are we going to do next? What should our family sign say? But also just talking about empathy, about reading important books, about checking sources, things that have really nothing to do with who's in office.
So how did you come up with 128? Is there any reason behind the number, or is that just where you got to and thought you were in a good place.
As when the kids came home from school and we'd hit 128, we stopped. No. Yeah, no, we just had no special number that we were aiming for. We knew that we wanted to try to get it on the bookshelves as soon as possible. So that was at the least a nice natural boundary for us to push against. So we were just trying to write as many as we could that felt practical and strong and high quality. And then I think once we started rereading it and it felt so solid, I feel like we just kind of looked at each other and were like, we're here. This is where we wanted it to be.
Right. We probably had about, do you think we had maybe 130? And then I think we didn't really even cut. We sort of morphed a couple together and combined things. It just.
Yeah. And with that number, as we would read through, sometimes it would be like, hey, look, we already talked about going to listen to podcasts from different multicultural perspectives in this other one. So,
right.
Some of them fell by the wayside that way.
Now I want to ask you questions about sustainability, because I also love that idea. And we do have ideas. I'm like, we should write like a couple extra chapters, Kerri, because I feel like we have sustainability. Now it's like, who gets to the table? Who are we electing? This is very exciting. I hope that, I feel like we're poised. I'm hopeful. I mean, the first couple of days of the year, I'll be honest, I haven't been so hopeful because, the news has been kind of rough. But when we talk about the book, I get excited because I really do feel like this is it. This is what's going to make us. This is what is going to cause progress. This is we are going to progress through this somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the last actions that we wrote was we sat down and we were trying to think why are we engaging, and why are we changing, and why are we still in the fight, and why are we reading up on all of this stuff still, and so many of our friends aren't, and what is this difference between us and them? And we started talking about our growth mindset, and it was a really exciting one to include, because I feel like once you switch yourself into a growth mindset, you open yourself up to the opportunities that are here in this problem that we're having, rather than just going against Trump himself. It speaks to that sustainability that you finally get to say, like, oh, I see, it's me. Like, local politics isn't even the act locally isn't even specific enough. Like, I need to be acting internally, and then I can act locally, and then we can grow nationally. And I feel like if we just cling to that understanding that, we're not going to a destination, we're on this mutual journey together. And if we just remember that the journey is it, then, that is the sustainability right there. That's where we have to be.
And I'm going to just add to one of my favorite actions is action 111. It's be upstanding. Just the idea that you can choose to be involved, choose to care, to give a damn about this, to even the things that aren't touching us, to stand up for it. And I think that's my most exciting. I had never even heard of the term upstanding before, and now I'm in love with it. Exciting. Proud to be on this side of the world, in this corner.
I like to give our listeners some kind of homework whenever I can. So in addition to the homework of they should go out and buy your book, is there maybe one action you could suggest for something that they should challenge themselves to do in the next week?
It's a great question.
That is.
And I didn't prep you for it. Sorry.
No, that's good. It's a wonderful one. I love it. I'm going to cheat a little with the question. So we have an entire chapter that we call our Passion Project chapter. And it is just different topics that we all care about, whether that's, ICE and immigration, net neutrality, economic justice, criminal justice reform, environmentalism. Just, I can't remember how many actions are in that chapter, but just many actions that are specific to these passions. And what I love about that chapter is we did not just write a pretty thing about why we should care. We went and we looked online and we looked through all the activist guides that we could find, and we found the groups that are already involved in those fights and that are already, walking the walk and talking the talk, and we included them in there. So I would say, if I could challenge anyone who has access to our book to look in that passion project, pick something that is near and dear to your heart, which will be in there because there are so many options, and find a place and sign up and get involved. I think it's nice when you can just go to someone else's website and say, I want to get involved, instead of having to be the thinker bee who has to come up with what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So just go sign up and, see how easy it is to start creating the world that you want to have.
Yeah, and I'm going to challenge people to just take one step where they live, which is also an action there. Just look around, what needs to be done, and figure out what you know, what you're good at, and lend it yourself to that cause. So even small things, it doesn't have to be political. You don't have to go door to door, but find a way to apply your voice. One of the exciting things for teenagers is that they're so much better at so many of these tech things. They're so savvy. I love the idea of these savvy kids going to some of us older, I'll just say like myself, people who are not, these are my first tweets, and lend a hand, or anyone, just to look where you live, how you can get involved, how you can show your community that you're paying attention, that you care. Show up at a meeting, as boring as they are, and listen, get there,
Yeah, we don't, I will say, we don't pull any punches in the book. So we do tell them, go to a city council meeting. We're like, it'll probably be boring. No, it'll definitely be boring. And it will. But those
so
are
boring.
So boring. But they're exciting too, because then you start to understand, the brick by brick foundation of this country. And, that's where we got to start.
I really like the first one, to find your passion, except I can't limit myself to one passion, which is why I'm doing a podcast where I get to talk about lots of different issues. But I do like the idea. I think that's really important. And one of the things that's been great about this podcast is I've been able to talk to people who have done that, who have taken their passion and really run with it and said, this is going to be my issue. My issue is voter registration. My issue is gun safety, and just sort of really run with that. And I think that can be really powerful.
Your chapter in our book is going to be the raising awareness chapter. That's going to be your favorite one. All the
You're already
ways
good at it.
Spread your message. Yeah.
Right.
That's a thing I can do. But yeah, I also like this idea of sort of figuring out what you're good at, and I'm sure I've told this story on here before, but, the first time I went to our neighborhood Indivisible group, they had all these different things to do, and I knew like knocking on doors wasn't going to be something that I was very comfortable at. But then they said, we need someone to do our Facebook page, and I said, that's the thing I can do. So
yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Where were you when we were doing our Facebook page?
I know, really.
So I think that's something that, everybody's got something like that, something that they can lend. Some people are really good at budgeting. Some people are great artists, but everybody's got some sort of talent that they can lend to these causes.
Absolutely. And I think that's not talked about enough. Such an American problem to just honor the, loud and the extroverts and stuff, but there are so many needs for different types of personalities in all of these fights, so it's exciting to think about that just because you're a quieter person who's good with numbers doesn't mean that you can't do anything. You've got lots and lots of opportunities still.
Right.
So I also want to ask, I have younger kids, and I know a lot of our listeners have younger kids as well. And so, I'm wondering what advice you have for getting our young children interested in these kind of actions and involved.
I feel like, there aren't many parenting things that you can be like, I think I'm doing this right. But I do think that I am doing right. I have 2 girls, they're 11 and 10, and we talk a lot about what they see in media